Okay, welcome back for the second part of our interview with Earl Cowan, who is the chief of police with, let me see if I get this right, the Swinomish Tribal Community. Did I get it right?
You did.
Look
Nailed
at
it.
me. Look
Nailed
at
it.
me. Every once in a while I do something right, and that is not very often, I'll be honest with you. From our first section, we had talked about you being a university police officer at the University of Central Florida right here in Orlando. Go Knights. I got to go to one of their football games last year, but it was against West Virginia University. And I'm a West Virginia University guy, so my wife and I got to go, and we actually got to sit in the owner's box.
Nice.
So it was a very nice honor. And the Mountaineers won. Sorry, Knights, but I'll support you now. Not sure why West Virginia and UCF are in the Big 12 conference, but what's going on with NCAA football, that's a whole different story, isn't it? But as we were talking about your UCF career, I'd ask you if you had the authority to investigate capital crimes, and you said absolutely you did. Mm-hmm. And then during our break, you mentioned that that is another area there where you are now on tribal lands, on Native American lands. And so tell us a little bit about that. What are your authorities? Where do they come from? Are you authorized by the United States government, by the state government of Washington State? How all that works?
Absolutely. So Swinomish, the tribe, has been very supportive of law enforcement ever since I started here. They value their police department. They value the work that we do. So let me back up for a second. So the Bureau of Indian Affairs is responsible for the federal government, for lack of a better term, meeting the treaty and trust obligations for the tribes. And so the Bureau of Indian Affairs has a law enforcement branch, so that they have, a law enforcement division. But the tribes at some point, and I don't quote me exactly, but in the 1970s, 80s, there was a Tribal Self-Determination Act that was passed that basically said, okay, tribe, if you can show you have a functioning government and you have this and you have that and you have the ability to provide these services, we'll do what's called a 638 contract. And the BIA will allow you to provide your services as long as you can meet these different standards. So the Swinomish Constitution established a police department. We have been in existence, and we have both tribal authority under the tribal constitution and the tribal laws that exist. The tribe actually has a law and order code, civil and criminal code, that applies to tribal members on reservation lands. And then we're also dual commissioned with the state. We have general authority, Washington State law enforcement authority as well. So we go to the same academy that all the officers in Washington go to, or which we couldn't get into for a while, long story, since been remedied, we would go to the Indian Police Academy, which is run through the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and then go to that equivalency academy after, same as I did when I came from Florida. So you would get your Washington certification that way.
To get the Indian certification, did you have to go to Glencoe, Georgia?
Artesia, New Mexico is where the Indian Police Academy is located.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so they like I said, both places, you could go to either one. At the time, we were kind of last on the list and couldn't necessarily get into the state academy, which was a big hurdle for us to overcome because we'd basically get whatever was left over in terms of training slots. So we worked with our legislators, we worked with the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission, and now we have equal access to the state academy, and they actually will hold a seat in every class for a tribe. And if there's no applicants, they'll give it up. But we now are no longer on a waiting list per se, which is really great, because so many of our tribes border state jurisdictions or city jurisdictions or county jurisdictions, and that way we're all trained the same way. A lot of times you're going to the academy with folks you're going to eventually be working with. So I was really thankful that our state legislature saw that and said, hey, we need to fix this.
Does that give you statewide authority?
It does.
Okay. So if you were called out to work on another tribal land or with a city or county or state agency, you're covered.
That's right. So we spend a lot of time, and they help us out too. The city of Anacortes is our neighboring jurisdiction to the west. We have a great working relationship with Chief Dave Floyd and his folks. And then to the east and to the south is Skagit County, and Sheriff Don McDermott has also been a great supporter of the relationship that we have with the Skagit County Sheriff's Office. So we're blessed to have that. Not all tribes have great relationships with the local agencies, and there's historical reasons for that. There's political reasons for that. But here at Swinomish, our tribal senate has been very supportive of us having those relationships and that close cooperation. One thing we talked about working capital cases like a murder, right? July, a couple of years ago, we had an overdose death of a 6-year-old child on methadone. At that time, I was down, pretty far on staffing, and I was working patrol, being the chief and also being the investigator. And I just knew I couldn't give that case the attention that it needed. So I called up the sheriff. He sent me like 4 detectives. And it was great because they came out. We worked collaboratively with everything, doing interviews, processing scenes, all those things. And we actually just were able to arrest that gentleman. We had to wait on toxicology forever because they wanted to be sure, but we were just able to arrest the father here 2 weeks ago. And he just had his arraignment yesterday, actually.
Excellent.
Working with the sheriff's office, the detectives, having that relationship, it was seamless. When I called and said, "Hey, Sheriff, I need help with this one," there was no questions. It was like, "Hey, what do you need? Where do you need it?" And so we're really blessed. Like I said, not all tribes have those great relationships. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But where we are here, we're very, very lucky.
Well, the guest we had on the show last week was an old retired DEA agent that I used to work for. He's my ASAC Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Pete Charette. And if you go back and listen to his episode, he just pounds liaison. I mean, that's when he came in as the boss. He said, "This is what we're going to do. You're going to liaison with all these different agencies." And that's the way it's supposed to be. It's a lot of our listeners hear me talk about the brotherhood and sisterhood of law enforcement, and that's part of it. So that when you do need help to an investigation, you get it. And the whole benefit is to the general public.
Absolutely.
Which is who we serve as law enforcement. We're public servants. But now with your tribe, are the geography of the tribe itself, is that a sovereign nation?
That's correct. It is a sovereign nation. So it's a nation within a nation. The Point Elliott Treaty, which was signed in 1855, kind of established that. And so we are on the eastern part of what they call Fidalgo Island. And like I said, the city of Anacortes and a little bit of Skagit County. If anybody knows where Deception Pass is, that's the area that we're in. Deception Pass would be Island. But yeah, so we have, borders, and within those boundaries, the tribe exercises civil jurisdiction over everybody within those boundaries. We exercise criminal jurisdiction over Native Americans within those reservation boundaries. And Congress recently did a reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act that now actually gives the tribes criminal jurisdiction with enumerated offenses in that VAWA authorization. So we actually can charge non-natives now in tribal court for a limited number of offenses. So the tribe actually retains that sovereignty given some of those cases. So a domestic violence against a tribal member by a non-native who has ties to the reservation, or an assault on one of my officers, we can actually prosecute that now as well. And you were talking just now about liaison work and the value of that. We have an incredible working partnership with the FBI, Seattle, and the Bellingham and Everett regional agent or resident agencies, the RAs. And they will actually come out if we have a major incident involving a tribal member, such as a homicide or a sexual assault. We have 2 agents that are assigned here to Swinomish. So they're our primary points of contact, and they are phenomenal. The working relationship we have with them is incredible. They bring so many resources. And again, that's a relationship that we've spent a lot of time growing over the last couple of years. Because as you know, agents move around and everything else, but the continuity that we've been able to keep in terms of the relationship because of the support that we give and the support that they give and the mutual benefit for us has been really incredible. And I'm really grateful for that as well. And a lot of that comes down to, like you said, the local ASACs and the SAC and, those folks. But our U.S. attorney partners as well are phenomenal. We have 3 tribal liaisons in the Western District of Washington, and they solely work Indian country cases. So that's really phenomenal as well. And I've got a line in that because of that, if I need to talk to the U.S. attorney for the district, I can call her up on her cell phone and say, "Hey, this is this and that." And it's just great. I mean, they're so supportive of the work out here now. And the missing and murdered Indigenous women and persons crisis that Indian country is facing. The Eastern District of Washington now has an appointed United States attorney exclusively for those cases as well.
Very good.
The federal government's taking it very seriously, and Washington State also is taking it very seriously. One of the things that Washington has done, similar to an Amber Alert, we actually have what's called a MIPA alert, a missing Indigenous person alert. And so we can file that if we have somebody go missing from a reservation, and it will blast out statewide. It'll be on the freeway reader boards, cell phones, radio, and then we just coordinate that through the Washington State Patrol. So we're able to put that information out very quickly. And it's a very low bar for us to do that in terms of an Amber Alert. There are certain criteria, things like that. But for the MIPA alert, we provide State Patrol with the information and they just blast it out for us.
And I think a lot of us have heard, without having a lot of knowledge about it, about the females that just come up missing on Indian tribes throughout the United States. This is not indicative to just one area of the country. It's everywhere.
That's right.
And it's astounding when you hear the numbers of young ladies who just disappear and are never heard of again. Their bodies are never found. You don't know what happened to them. Did they go into human trafficking? Were they murdered and buried? I mean, you just don't know.
You don't.
And then you see shows like that movie Wind River.
Yes.
I critiqued that movie here on our Patreon channel of Game of Crimes, and it was just phenomenal to see what was going on. I don't know how true it was, but if it was, because if you remember the security force from the oil refineries or the drilling wells, whatever they were the bad guys. And it was, basically mercenaries that came in. But after everything you just said, I've got a bunch of questions. So you're a sovereign nation within the United States. Are you bound by the Constitution of the United States?
Yes, everyone is bound by the Constitution of the United States.
Including tribal members?
Yes, but they also have their own tribal constitution in addition to.
And I'm going to guess there's nothing in conflict with the U.S. Constitution.
It's actually pretty similar. Yeah, it's pretty similar.
How big is, geographically, how big is your tribal area, your tribal community lands?
Yeah, we're just shy of 10 square miles.
So we're not talking like
Not
the state
huge.
of Wyoming.
No, but there are some reservations where, you could be an hour or more away, especially in the Dakotas, Montana, some of those areas. Our tribe does pretty well economically. We have a casino and we're, recipients of a lot of grants. So we have a very robust law enforcement program. Some reservations or folks that I've talked to at various trainings, it's them and one other person for a jurisdiction that's, the size of Rhode Island or, whatever.
Yeah.
And so we're lucky here. Some of the other interesting things, is we have street addresses here, just like normal everyday society, right? You get out into the Dakotas or Montana and it's like, hey, drive till you get this tree, take a left, go to the yellow house, take a right. And seriously, I mean, that's sometimes, talking with the folks out of the Gallup resident agency for the FBI, it's kind of culture shock for them to get down there because it really still is the Wild West in some places.
I was going to say in that movie Wind River where you've got, was it Lizzie Olsen, I think was the FBI agent, and she came in her business suit and her high heels and that culture shock. I just think that movie was done very well.
They really honestly did a phenomenal job. And honestly, in most places, that is the experience for a lot of our tribal law enforcement folks. Like I said, we're lucky to have a good relationship with our FBI partners. It's not like that everywhere. Early on in that movie, they sent one agent. And then they were like, hey, if it's not meeting this, or this, we're not going to push it forward. Our agents and our U.S. attorney partners, through years of advocating, have been able to get us now where if we call, we get taken very seriously. That's still not the case for other places in the United States. It's changing, but it's still, that movie accurately reflects it. And, I think, in that movie, it was very well done in kind of painting that picture of reservation policing for a lot of the country where you're out there by yourself and you're handling business because you have to. You don't have another option.
And the poverty that goes along with it.
Yeah. The one scene in that movie that was particularly impactful, if you remember, was the where the FBI agent really wanted to interview the mother of that missing girl, and she was engaging in self-harm in the bed. That happens here because that poverty does still exist here to a certain degree. And the historical and generational trauma that's associated with years and years and years of things that have carried down with folks, that's what, leads to a lot of our addiction issues, our substance abuse issues, things like. But the movie did a really phenomenal job of capturing some of that.
They did. I did enjoy that. Now, another question is, so you said you called in the sheriff's detectives to help you with that case. Can they just openly come onto the reservation and enforce laws because it is a sovereign nation?
So they can under certain circumstances, but I will tell you that they know and have learned that if they want to come here and get stuff done, they
It's the
need a
right way.
they need a liaison with us because we can open doors for them, get information for them, make connections for them. And, that's always been, the attitude that, at least the sheriff's office here has taken in my time, that we're collaborative partners on cases that happen here.
Mm-hmm.
Our Skagit County Drug Task Force has helped us on several cases out here where they've come out and provided technical assistance or helped us with drug buys or things like that. And so the partnerships that we have are really, really great. But yeah, the non-native folks that are on the reservation, they're subject to the laws of the state of Washington. So again, that's why we have our state authority. Our tribe thought that was important that we be able to do that. Not all reservations in Washington opt for that state authority. And in those cases, if they do detain a non-tribal member, a non-native, they actually do have to call the sheriff's office and have them come out and conduct the investigations and then file the charges. So, yeah, it's kind of dual purpose. So they can under certain circumstances, but like I said, we're blessed here that we have that great working relationship where they're not going to come out and just kick rocks and not let us know what's going on.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's just professional courtesy also.
Mm-hmm.
So non-natives can live on tribal lands?
Yes. So we actually have about 1,000 house community here. It's called the Shelter Bay community. It's got a really big marina. It's right on the water. And that entire community is on leased land. So the tribe owns the land. The tribe leases it to the community. And so the individual homeowners own their homes, but they don't own the land that the homes are on. So they pay a lease fee for being able to live on that place. And kind of on our west end of our reservation, there's a lot of vacation homes and Airbnb type stuff. And it's all, again, on leased land. So that's one of the revenue streams that the tribe has to help support essential government services, is those lease payments. And then some of them are owned by families, and those lease payments go directly to those families.
And the businesses that are on the tribal property, can a non-tribal member own a business in there?
Yes, they can. They have to get a business license through the tribe because it is a sovereign jurisdiction. And then they're regulated by all the tribe's civil codes that associate with that.
So like that restaurant you took me to for breakfast? That's on tribal land there, right?
That one's not. That's actually in the town of LaConner, which is just across the water.
It's a good restaurant, I'm telling you.
Yeah, no, they do a good job. They do a great job.
Oh, yeah. And you were talking about narcotics investigations. Did you ever see DEA come up your way?
So we actually have a DA office in Bellingham, which is right across the parking lot from our FBI resident agency. And we've not really had up until this last year a big DEA presence, because a lot of our stuff is small time stuff, right? It's local dealers, it's selling to family. It's not DEA level cases, but it's a huge impact for a small community. And so the FBI maintains primary jurisdiction for those kinds of crimes at the federal level on the reservation. But our DEA, ASAC for that area, has contacted us, reached out, and we're starting to see involvement in our investigations and support from DEA. And also the Bureau of Indian Affairs that I was talking about earlier, they also have a drug enforcement agent in our region who actually is attached to DEA. And so that partnership, I think, is only going to continue to grow. And I think being a tribe, we're unique in that we have that ability to directly access those federal resources basically just by picking up the phone. So
I know these sound like silly questions, but I just don't know. If you give somebody a ticket on tribal lands for speeding, what court do they go to?
We actually have discretion, depending on which road they're on, to either cite them into state court or tribal court for civil traffic violations. If it's a criminal traffic violation, if they're native, it goes to the tribal court. If it's non-native, it goes to the local district court.
Okay. And so what about felonies? Does the tribe have a court for felony crimes?
So the tribe has class A, B, and C offenses. So think of that as felony, gross misdemeanor, right? And then for any felonies on the reservation that are committed by non-natives, those go to the Skagit County Superior Court. So we have an assigned prosecutor, obviously with the tribal court, and then we have an assigned prosecutor at Skagit County Prosecutor's Office. And again, great relationship there that we've worked really hard to build so that when they take our cases, we're giving them a good product and they're working really hard for us. We had an incident. It was a controlled substance homicide investigation that we did. So somebody told one of our tribal members the fentanyl pills, the little blue M30 counterfeit pills.
Yeah.
We investigated the death here. We linked it back to an off-reservation location. Our local drug task force helped us do the search warrant at the house, get the folks into custody, and then it was prosecuted through the Superior Court, and those folks did state time for the controlled substance homicide. So it was another example of that, teamwork and that relationship that we have to be able to do that all the way through.
And I think were you a member of the FBI's Northwestern Safe Trails Task Force?
That's right. Yeah, I was a task force officer for quite a few years, and that task force is spearheaded by the FBI, and it's made up of 7 tribes in our region, us Tulalip tribes, the Lummi tribes, the Upper Skagit tribe, the Soxhawtla tribe, the Swinomish Tribe, and the Nooksack tribe, I think, is everybody. But
wow.
Basically what that does is we're all federally commissioned under Title 21 as special federal officers and Title 18 as special deputy U.S. Marshals for our time on the task force. And we're able to swear in federal cases. We have basically the same investigative authority as an FBI agent when we're working under that. And it allows us all to have that jurisdiction to support each other on the different reservations. And then for the tribes that don't have state authority, that Title 18 and Title 21 authority allows them to work cases off the reservation that have a nexus to drugs on the reservation.
Excellent.
So, that task force, there's quite a few of them throughout the United States. It was a great relationship, continues to be a great relationship. It was a great experience while I was working there, being able to get the training, and like I said, that immediate access to be able to swear things out in federal court, because everybody's got limited resources. So it's really cool that partnership. Really enjoyed my time doing that. Big advocate and supporter of it still.
Yeah. Not to mention the connections you get.
Absolutely.
That's the best part. It's really simple. That if I call your agency and you and I have never met, if you've got a stack of things to do, it's probably going to go on the bottom of the stack. But if you and I know each other and we've worked, especially if we've worked together, it might just go to the top of the stack.
Absolutely.
So it's just human nature, but that connection really helped.
It really does. It really does. And, it was really cool. Last year we had a unique opportunity to get actual FaceTime with the Deputy Attorney General, Lisa Monaco, here in Seattle, where we had an hour-long conversation, myself, my tribal prosecutor, and a couple of our tribal senators. Because of that relationship with the U.S. Attorney's Office, we had an hour-long meeting directly with Deputy Attorney General Monaco.
Nice.
Yeah, it's relationships, you know.
It's exactly right.
Just a few weeks ago, I was actually in your old neck of the woods in West Virginia. I was at Clarksburg at the FBI CJIS, the Criminal Justice Information Services Division. Spent a couple days there, and again, learning and networking. And said now where I have a first name basis on somebody, if I need something from the firearms unit or the training unit or the TAPS unit, or I can call, and say, hey, Lisa, hey, Christy, the opportunities with those relationships, it's phenomenal.
It is. Going back to the felony. So if there's a felony charged in tribal court and they're found guilty, do you guys have a tribal prison?
So typically, if it's a serious felony, such as a homicide or a sexual assault, we'll typically request FBI assistance to investigate that. And typically that case will be elevated to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and then they'll look at federal time or federal probation. We can sentence folks up to a 3-year sentence in tribal court for serious crimes. But currently, as it's written right now, that's the max that we can sentence folks to. We can stack up to 9 years if they get convicted of 3 separate crimes. But for our violent assaults, homicides, sexual assaults, the federal partners really help us with that. And then they would end up in the federal system.
If someone gets a 3-year conviction in tribal, is there a tribal prison, or would they go to the county jail? Or
no, so they would typically go to there are several jails in Washington that are run by tribes, and that's where we would send them for their time.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. It's that, again, I hate to sound ignorant, but
it's a little microcosm. It's its own little world.
Yeah, it really is. And it
is.
And you're only ignorant if you don't ask the questions, is the way I looked at it. I was going to say, I'll be the first to tell you, DEA never hired me because I was real smart.
But it's interesting because, like I said, the different tribes obviously have different relationships with their local community, different politics within each other. So, working here versus working at the Tulalip tribes or working at the Lummi tribes, it's different. It's different. It's the same, but it's different. Community priorities, things like that. So, like I said, Swinomish has gotten it really right in terms of with their law enforcement and with their relationships with local governments in general. They see the benefit in those partnerships and those relationships, and we're very blessed to have that.
Yeah, and the conference that you invited Javier and I up to speak at, I mean, I was very impressed with everybody I met there. There were not only tribal police officers, but there were sheriffs and chiefs in there and executive staff members. Everybody absolutely looked professional, but everyone we spoke to was professional. There was no question about that. And it's a testament to you too, understanding what it is to initiate those connections between other agencies where you put on this conference. And I'm thinking you probably paid for everything or the tribe did. And it benefits everybody in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I thank you again for bringing us up there.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for coming. I'm glad we were able to get you out and, get you out here when the sun was still shining for sure.
Yeah. It was beautiful. I tell you what, I'd wake up in the mornings and it was foggy, but I was sitting in my hotel room. We were at the casino hotel there. Is that the tribal casino you were talking about?
Yes, sir.
And very nice. Everything was excellent in there. The food was outstanding. But as I'm sitting there, I'm doing work on my laptop and I could hear boats coming up. And I think you told me it was one of the feeder rivers for the Puget Sound.
That's right. So there's a channel that runs through there that kind of goes in between kind of the north part and then into the southern area. And it's a kind of a shortcut that you don't have to go all the way around some of the islands or through Deception Pass. So there's a lot of marine traffic that comes through that area. And so we actually stay pretty busy. We have a marine patrol unit and a fish and wildlife unit that works on the water as well, which gives us some unique opportunities there, to do enforcement work, search and rescue work.
Yeah.
And then we actually work also with U.S. Border Patrol through Operation Stone Garden, where they will reimburse us to go out and do assistance patrols for them as well, which is a good motivator for my folks, especially in the summertime. You get paid overtime to go out and drive around in a boat in the San Juan Islands.
Yeah. Twist my arm.
Exactly. So
I'm not going to go fly your plane. I might fly in your plane, but I'll go out on a boat. That's interesting. I love it.
Yeah.
So let's get a little personal now.
Sure.
You're not Native American, but you're working and you're now the chief. You worked your way up from patrolman all the way up to the chief.
That's right. Yeah.
On tribal lands, and you're not tribal. So how did that go over?
I spent a lot of time building relationships with people and earning trust from people and if I say something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to follow up on it, right? It really, coming from the outside, it started small. It started with just conversations. And then eventually some of the folks kind of took me under their wing and kind of built some credibility. And then once kind of word got out and working patrol, talking to people, really, I mean, policing is policing anywhere. People just want to feel safe. They want to feel heard. They want to feel protected. They want to live in a good place for quality of life, right? Policing is all about quality of life. Is our primary, crime control is an element of that. But law enforcement in general is quality of life for our community is our mission, right? Taking the time, especially working nights, I would get out in the neighborhood and I would walk. And even at 2:00 in the morning out here, people be outside smoking cigarettes or doing whatever. And just stopping and talking to people and seeing, hey, what's going on? What problems are you seeing that need our attention, And so eventually, after a couple of years working patrol, I was able to become a detective. And man, those relationships started paying off big time with that.
Yeah.
Because you earn that trust with folks. And then, they would feel comfortable talking to you. And they'd be like, I won't talk to him, but I'll talk to you. So that was something that was, I encouraged all my new officers to do, was to go out and it's like, hey, you need to find your way and grow your relationships. I can do introductions, but you got to earn your way in.
You got to earn the trust.
Exactly. And you can't ever break that trust because then you get into that cycle of that historical distrust, right? Well, he said he was going to do something, he didn't. And if I end up in that situation, I will always follow up and apologize and say, hey, how can I make it right? Because the value of that relationship is just so important.
Absolutely.
So in the small community, like I said, was able to work my way up into the detective spot, eventually into a patrol supervisor spot. Eventually, went through a leadership change where I was acting chief for about 6 months. When they hired a chief, brought him in, he made me his lieutenant. Worked as a lieutenant for a while. And then when he left the agency, they asked me to be the chief. So I've been doing that for just shy of 5 years now.
Nice.
And the big thing that I found for me is the open communication and just being honest with people, especially with our council, just having the frank conversations and answering the hard questions with honesty. Hey, if I can't do something, I'm going to tell you and I'm going to tell you why. And then I'm going to say, well, if you want me to do that, here's what I need to be able to do that. And like I said, we have an 11-person council. It rotates elected positions from the tribe, and they rotate in positions a year, except for 1 year, there's 3 positions because it's 11. So it allows for some leadership continuity and also allows for those relationships to maintain. And then, when you get new people in, they kind of get schooled on the sitting senators, by the sitting senators. And so that's another thing that Swinomish does really well, is that continuity piece. But I've always felt, as long as I've been here, very supported by the council, very supported by my boss, who is the equivalent of our city manager. Her title is the general manager for the tribe. But it's the communication. It's the open, honest communication. It's the transparency piece, talking with the families, talking with the folks that we, if we have to take people into custody, we take care of business, and then we explain, hey, we had to do this because this, and this. And I do monthly community dinners here, where the entire community will come to our social services building or our community gym and have dinner. And, folks that you arrested a couple weeks before, you'll hug it out at the community dinner, because they know you're just doing the work. And one of the other interesting things here, at least up until recently in just the last couple months, if I have to take a juvenile into custody, the majority response now that you get is, my kid would never do that. Well, here it's, my kid did what?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll handle it. Yeah. And there was one point where I arrested a kid, and it was a simple thing. It was underage drinking. He ran. We chased him. We caught him. I called his mom and I said, hey, you want me to bring him home? Said Juvie's not going to take him because they're overcrowded, like all places, right? And she's like, no, I want you to bring him to Uncle Chester's house. And I said, okay, I know where that is. And so I drive over there. He wouldn't get out of the car.
He knew what was going to happen.
He was like, take me to jail. Take me to jail. I'm like, yeah, man, no, you got to get out of the car. So I walk him up to the door there and knock on the door, and then he's shaking, and the door opens, and it's literally family circle time in there. Yeah. All the aunties, the uncles, the nephews. And if you know about tribes, you know what I'm talking about. All the aunties, the uncles, and the elders are going to have a conversation. So that accountability piece, I mean, it's refreshing in a sense to know that, at least here in this small community, we're starting to see a little bit less of it now, but, they will, they take the opportunity to talk to the kids, work with the kids, really be involved. And, so it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see that. Having been here 15 years now, too, some of the kids that were kids when I first started here now have their own children. So watching those kids grow up and watching them, a lot of them, of course, getting their lives on track, or suffered from generational trauma or loss of parents growing up due to alcohol or drugs or whatever. Watching their success stories is also really rewarding and really cool.
Right. What is refreshing is hearing that you're working in a community that actually supports the police.
Yes.
And I think that, quite honestly, I think that's more common than we know. It's just the media never wants to tell us that part. They always want to tell us the bad stuff. Have you ever had an instance, or still having instances, where you have to go confront a member of the tribal community, and they say, you're not even one of us. I don't have to do a damn thing you say. You ever been confronted like that?
Early on, yes, because I was the new kid and I was a non-native, I was just the white cop. Eventually, over building those relationships, building that time, your reputation gets out there. They know you're going to treat them fair. They know you're not out to just put them in jail. They know you're not out there just to throw down on them. And so now I would say we see a lot less of that, because the folks know the real reasons why we're out there. And they know, again, we're going to be fair, we're going to be consistent, and we're just trying to, help everybody with quality of life. So we see that less. When I was a young cop here, though, my first couple of years here, they're like, oh, hey, I'm going to call the tribal chairman, or I'm going to call Senator so-and-so. And it eventually came to the point, well, it's like, here, we'll use my phone. Let's go ahead and call them up and see what they say.
Yeah.
And that stopped pretty quick. So,
yeah. I know. I love it, because you'd stop people and they're like, I know your chief. Well, that's good. Know him too. You need to call him? I'll take you up and talk to him if you want to.
Exactly. So like I said, I've got a fairly young crew here now, but I think we've done a pretty good job of developing the culture, set my expectations, my supervisors set their expectations. And again, community takes really good care of us. And my expectation is that my folks take really good care of them.
Now, so your department, and it's a small department, but, and you took me by your police station there. I got to meet several of the officers, some of your staff members there. Love the building it's in, the history that's in that common area. That's, I think you showed me there's prosecutor's office here and the manager's office and all that.
Yep.
It was really cool. But also noticed that you guys had really nice police cars.
Yes.
I think you have all of the services of a big city police department. You have a drone program. You have a K9 unit.
Marine Patrol.
Yeah. Now, where does that funding come from? Does that come from the tribe, or does that come from Bureau of
So
Indian Affairs?
we get some money from Bureau of Indian Affairs. That's under that 638 contract program. We get some money directly from the tribe's general fund. One of the unique things here in Washington is the tribe owns a couple of fuel stations on the reservation. We actually, the tribe, have a compact with Washington State where we collect 75 cents of every dollar of fuel tax revenue that the state would charge.
Mhm.
So for every dollar, we get 75 cents. And that actually funds the majority of our law enforcement services because the compact stipulates they have to be used for public safety, traffic safety, transportation. It really limits what the money can be used for.
Mm-hmm.
And so our tribe tends to use a lot of that money towards public safety. So
Do you have a helicopter?
I wish. I miss it every day, as you can imagine.
Oh, yeah, I'll
yeah.
bet.
But I will tell you, our FLIR drone, we've had great success with as far as criminal apprehension, search and rescue, finding missing kids, finding missing elderly folks. The drone technology for the cost, we've had great luck with that program. So for a fraction of the cost of what a helicopter can cost. But
yeah,
we also have great federal partners, though. Customs and Border Protection has an air unit about 15 minutes north of us. The Coast Guard's about 15 minutes west of us. And then for search and rescue, Naval Station Whidbey Island has a search and rescue helicopter unit that we can call on if we need air support as well. So we've got the partnerships with our federal partners and the regional assets that we have here are phenomenal.
That's excellent. I mean, it was a trip of a lifetime for me because I've never been to that part of the country to see how beautiful Land Cortez is. And then you go in the community and you were showing me where the water's everywhere. And it's tidal, and you guys do suffer from flooding, but you were explaining to me how the tribe they already own the land, but they're either refurbishing or they're setting new standards that buildings have to be so far back from the water or they have to be elevated so that if it does flood, you're not losing your housing and people aren't losing their personal effects. And it seems like it's everything I saw appeared to be very forward thinking out there. And that's my little humble background as a country boy, redneck hillbilly.
One of the things here in Indian country is they say that we're always thinking of the next 7 generations. So the decisions that get made today have an impact on the next 7 generations. And I think that really drives, especially our tribal senators and our community members, to really put thought into decisions and to really look at that long-term impact and the investments now. And I think, that was something that, 30, 40 years ago when they said, hey, we're going to build a casino and hey, we have to have a hotel. Those leaders made those decisions back then, and that's gotten to the tribe in its position now. And now those leaders are making decisions going forward to continue to ensure the quality of life for the next 7 generations.
Wow. Wouldn't it be interesting if all the leaders in our country would think that far ahead instead of just thinking to the next election? But again, I try not to get political here. I just got to throw those little jabs in wherever I can. Do you, now as a white guy, do you hold any other positions within the tribal community?
I'm on a couple advisory boards. So I'm on our law and order committee. I'm on like a public health advisory committee. Those are kind of my two within the tribe. But I also part of the executive board for the Skagit County Police Chiefs and Sheriffs Association. So we meet monthly. And of course, that's where those relationships come into play. Like we started up a regional training group so that all the agencies in our multi-county region can benefit from training hosted different places. And, again, the partnership stuff, it's important.
We need that education for the officers, people like me that don't know anything about tribal lands. And all you ever see on movies or TV is that law enforcement cannot go on those lands because they are sovereign nations. So it's interesting to hear that it sounds like the Swinomish Tribe is very progressive, forward thinking, and has gone through all this, probably a lot of this at your behest or through your direction to, I don't want to say modern day, but it makes it workable for everybody.
Wow. Yeah, we had an incident here a while back where one of our tribal members, a young lady, was killed in an automobile crash just off the reservation. And one of my officers responded out there. And the Washington State Patrol, of course, is the primary jurisdiction for the fatality accident. But my officer being there when the family started showing up was able to talk with the state patrol and say, hey, these are the important practices that culturally need to be done for this girl's family to be able to deal with death and move on. And so how do we integrate that with what you guys need to do for your investigation? And and the majority of my department is non-native. I have a lieutenant that's a tribal member, and I have some spouses of tribal members that work for the agency, but the majority is non-native. But they take that stuff very seriously, knowing the importance of it to our tribal members, and knowing that when somebody passes, there are certain things, cultural practices, things like that. And I got to hand it to our local state patrol offices. They were open to that and working with us to make sure that we could do those things. And that actually led to them saying, hey, like, we should do a training for our folks. Mm-hmm. And it's my understanding now that they're actually building a training for Washington's Basic Academy. The Criminal Justice Training Commission is working on it so that every officer that goes through the Basic Academy at least gets exposure to Indian country policing, the differences, the similarities, the cultural aspects, and things like that. So I'm really, really happy that in Washington, we're pretty lucky that the state understands and respects the relationships that the tribes have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's, a lot of that's just basic common courtesy amongst humanity. But also,
like you said, if you don't know, the education piece is huge.
It is. And I have to say, you have changed my opinion somewhat of the state of Washington, because it does sound progressive. Just again, the media only publishes the bad stuff. They have a hard time publishing the good stuff. Now, there's a couple things that you failed to tell me about that I had to do through, because I am a trained criminal investigator, that I was able to find out about you. But you've been recognized with a couple different awards and honors, haven't you?
Over the time, yeah, I've been fortunate to
one
be
of those
in the right place at the right time.
Yeah,
if you will.
No, I don't know about that. I think it's through good hard work and dedication to your profession. Tell us about what happened in, was it 2013? You got a Red Cross recognition?
Sure. So minding my own business one day, and I get a call that there's this vehicle that is doing donuts out in front of our casino, and anyway, it gets jammed up and catches fire. And what I found out later is the driver had been super intoxicated. She had blown a tire. She had taken a rim all the way down to the brake pad and caught her car on fire. And she was just sitting there romping on the accelerator, trying to continue to go. The engine compartment was fully engulfed when I got there, and trying to fight her out of the car, because it's a hybrid too. And those things get explosive, all kinds of pretty colors and dangerous chemicals, and she's just hard fast, not letting go of the steering wheel, just romping on the gas. And I'm like, this is going to suck, but I'm gonna have to knock this lady out to get her out of the car. So just as I'm getting ready to do that, another officer shows up, and we're able to muscle her out of the car, get her away from the car, and then it ends up becoming fully engulfed. And so we were able to save her from herself. So that was a pretty unique opportunity. And I actually, when I went back and cleaned up the scene after the fire department got done, I still have the Ford emblem from that car that was left on the ground. Keep it in my office just as a reminder from that.
Yeah.
But
wow.
She thought she was in a completely different city from where she was when we finally got a chance to talk with her and get her calmed down. But she was hell bent on not getting out of that car. And I'm thinking to myself, man, this thing's fire's getting bigger. It's getting really hot. We got to go.
Yeah.
And it was something.
How old was she?
Mid-40s.
Oh, geez. And I don't mean this to sound derogatory, because that's probably what it's going to sound, but I just want to ask, the stigmatism that goes along with Native Americans here in the United States is that they're all alcoholics, that they're, you see in the old movies, they talk about give the Indians the fire water. That's all they want. Tell me that's a myth and not the truth.
Unfortunately, on some reservations, that is a reality. Here, before I started working here in the 80s and 90s, alcohol abuse was very rampant on this reservation. Drunken fights all the time, every night in the streets. That has mellowed so much, and our tribes put a lot of money into prevention and counseling and services and things like that. And so they solved the alcohol problem here pretty good. There's still the occasional folks that like to drink and party, but the biggest issue for us now is the fentanyl crisis that's facing everyone. And unfortunately, what we've learned here is the demand is so high here on the reservation, they're able to charge 10 times what they can charge, per se, like in the city of Everett or something like that, for these pills that they can buy. And then now the fentanyl powder has become a challenge for us to deal with. So we're not even seeing the pills as much anymore, as much as it is the powder. But in some reservations, the poverty levels are so bad that, that's the reality. The folks are using those things to deal with the life circumstances.
Right. Now there was and thank you for explaining that, because I just those stigmas, you just again, it's on television, but you were recognized another time, weren't you? by the FBI?
For my participation on the Safe Trails Task Force, yeah. So, like I said, I was a special federal officer for several years. Had again a great working relationship with the local FBI field offices. Worked a lot of joint investigations with them, and one of the agents put me in for a director's award from Director Ray. So yeah, I was given that. I want to say it was back in 2021. But that was a pretty cool honor. Just a small town reservation cop in northwestern Washington, and being honored with recognition for supporting work that really branches out and really affects a large portion of the western part of Washington on the different reservations.
And that wasn't just a certificate of appreciation. That was the FBI Director's Award. So that's,
Yes,
for our
that's correct.
listeners, that's a big deal.
It's a pretty big deal. It was
Yeah.
pretty awesome to be called in and say, hey, we want to present you with this. But, like all the good cops out here, we're just going to tell you, hey, we were doing just the work that we're doing every day.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember when, and we're getting close to the end here, but I still want to bring some things up. When you and I were talking, we got to talking about fentanyl, and you educated me on the fact that the Chinese are shipping precursor chemicals to Canada, and the Mexicans have sent their drug manufacturers, their fentanyl manufacturers, to Western Canada, where they're producing fentanyl now and feeding that not up our southwest border, but down from our Canadian border.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how we're seeing. It's interesting how we're seeing that change too. Yeah, it's something.
You joke around, it's everywhere, but by God, it's everywhere.
Literally, it is everywhere.
I could go off on the Mexicans for a whole episode myself, not Mexican people, but the Mexican government for their naivety or their corruption or both. But that's not what we're here to talk about, so I won't do that to you. It's thank you so much, first of all, for bringing Javier and I up there to speak, to see the beautiful part of that country, to meet so many fantastic people that just gives me hope for law enforcement in that area, because again, we only heard the bad stuff in the media. Got to meet when you started your conference, you had a member of the tribal council there to start the conference, and I thought that was very commendable. We've been to other conferences where they actually will have people come in with, say, Indian prayers and do an Indian dance and things like that, but it's always, being the cultural deficient person I am, it's always interesting to see things like that. And we got the chance to talk to him for a while, and I believe his wife works with you there in the police department. It was just such an honor to come up and be part of all that. I can't thank you enough. And then to come on the show here and give us, a couple hours of your time, because I know you're on duty right now. You've got more important things to do than sit around and talk to an old has-been from law enforcement. I do want to point out that you can see over my right shoulder those books. And if you look over your right shoulder, boy, those three books look very familiar.
Right? I know. It's almost like they were placed there.
How about that? And that would be Manhunters, How We Took Down Pablo Escobar. And that's a cheesy commercial right there, ladies and gentlemen.
But I will tell you, it is an excellent read.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very much. And I guess, breakfast will be on me again the next time I come out. So that was one of the best breakfasts I've ever had. That was excellent.
Phenomenal. Good stuff.
It was. If people want to find out more about you, now you and I had a little conversation about your social media experience, and I don't want to, if you don't mind giving us a few more minutes, I'd like for you to explain to everybody, because we're all about wellness and mental health here on the Game of Crimes, and we hear a lot of it from retired police officers. We hear a lot about it from former military veterans, other first responders, but we don't talk too much about those that are still in active duty. And so you've got an experience here that I'd really appreciate you sharing with our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I just completed my 20th year in law enforcement. And over those 20 years, just being a university police officer, working on the reservation, it's not big city, it's not in your face all the time, but we see a lot of tragedy. I saw a lot of dead young people at the university from traffic collisions, alcohol, here on the reservation, drug overdoses, again, car accidents, different things like that. We see a lot of stuff, child abuse cases, sexual abuse cases. 20 years of that builds up. And when you and I started law enforcement, it was always shove it down, drive on to the next call, just do your job. And so about this time last year, I had actually linked up with a mental health therapist earlier in the year for some other things that I had going on. But for me, I kind of hit a point in late October last year and it was really strange because I'd just be at work and I'd start feeling anxiety or a panic or whatever, right? And it's like, we don't do that. We're cops, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, your body's going to decide for you when it's time for you to take a break if you don't monitor it yourself and take intermittent breaks. And so I had a couple weeks of doing that. I was just trying to deny it, trying to push it down, trying to push through it. Had a conversation with my therapist, and she said, you need a break now. And I said, okay, well, in a couple weeks, when my number 2 gets back from her vacation, we'll talk about it. And she's like, no, today. And
Wow.
so I went to my boss and I said, hey, boss, this is what my therapist says. And in a couple weeks, when my number 2 gets back from her vacation, we'll talk about scheduling me some time off to work on some of this. And my boss, thankfully, was like, no, we're going to do that today and we're going to figure it out because we need you for the long game. And so they were super supportive. And she said, what time do you think you'll need? Meet with your physician, meet with your mental health professional. You've got FMLA time that you can take. You've got leave time that you can take. And of course, being the chief, I'm like, I can't take that much time away from the organization. What are they going to do without me? Guess what they did without me? They worked through it. They figured it out and they kept going. And they did a phenomenal job of it, right? Because they all said, hey, you've put your heart and soul into this place for this long. You need a break. Go deal with some of those things. Work through some of those things. So I started meeting with my therapist twice a week. Started working on, I think a lot of us in law enforcement can relate. We tend to be people pleasers. We want to make people happy. We want to do good things. We can all work out more. So making the time to do that was important for me. And really stepping away and taking that break for a minute allowed me to focus on, okay, who are you as a person? What are you doing? Where have you been? What's been working? What's been not? And how do you process some of these things going forward? So again, the mental health therapy, it's not for everybody. I found it super beneficial. Therapeutic massage once a month has been super helpful. Acupuncture, I've been doing that weekly. And check your insurance benefits if you're still active and find out, some of those things because, they'll take care of your sessions and stuff for a pretty reasonable cost. But man, like the acupuncture session, that's like my hour of vacation every week. And it's amazing. I found a practitioner that is not just sticking needles in. She actually talks to you, finds out what's going on, does the work. So I just encourage everybody, and even for my folks, quarterly, we'll bring in a massage therapist to the station and our folks can schedule up hour sessions and we cover the bill for it. So, I mean, just little things we can do to ease the stress that, these folks are experiencing and dealing with, I think is just so important. And like I said, from my end, social media was a huge stressor for me that I didn't realize was until I said, I'm going to turn this off and I'm going to turn that off. And I haven't gone back.
Yeah.
And I realized how much time I was wasted on there, how distracting it was, how stressful it was. And so now the only social media I really have is LinkedIn, and I feel just so much better making all those changes. Like I said, from the self-care routine to the working out to the, just being able to talk to folks. And then also I think talking with my folks now, when I start seeing stuff like that, it's like I'm speaking from a position of credibility because I've been through it. And the other thing that one of my guys, his name's Sergeant Mark DeBona, he's retired from the Seminole County Sheriff's Office. He's very open with his mental health struggles from back in the day and is a huge advocate now. He would actually be another great person for you to talk with as well, just on law enforcement mental health. And I'll send you his information. But
Please
his
do.
personal story and his support of me through my time in dealing with some of those things, and of course, my family's support and my agency's support and my leadership support allowed me to come back from that multi-month break kind of with a renewed vision, a renewed perspective on myself. And then, like I said, bringing back the importance of those things with a firsthand perspective to where it's not just we're talking about wellness days or this or that. It's like, no, here's the real value and here's what I can share with you about my experience.
It's amazing. And if I can add to that, our families are affected by that as well. I always refer to our families as our unsung heroes. I had a lady on here a few months ago, Jenna Griffith, out of Nashville, out of Franklin, Tennessee, there in Nashville, and had her husband came on also the following week, former military. He works with organizations to help veterans deal with PTSD, or not even, it doesn't have to be PTSD. It's just if you're having issues. And so what she did is she started a group that helps the family members. And it's that's one thing we just never think about. But I'm so glad you told me about that. The reason I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention is here's a 20-year veteran who still has probably another 20 years working time that he wants to do. He may not admit that, but I tell you, when we leave, it's hard to leave law enforcement because that's just who you are. That's your life. It's a lifestyle. But we're just normal people. We're human beings just like everybody else out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just we chose a career path that's a little bit different from what other people do, but it has effects on all of us. So I was one of those guys that thought I was tough and didn't need counseling. And, my partner got shot in 1989 in Miami, and I had dreams about that, not nightmares, but just relived it until I retired from DEA in 2013. Maybe that's what caused my hair to fall out, and I'm just blaming it on my daughters. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But
for me, just as an aside, people have heard the analogy, put on your oxygen mask first before you help others. This lives on my desk as a reminder of that for everybody that I talk to. I don't know if you saw that when you were here.
I don't remember seeing it, but I like it.
But you got to take care of yourself first. And that's my visual reminder of that every day with my folks. And, I've got a sergeant right now who's he needs to take some light duty time from an injury and he's stressing about it. And I'm like, well, hey, what would you tell your guys to do in this case? He's like, I tell them to take the break and care for themselves. And I'm like,
there you go.
Hey, take your own advice, man. Like, we'll get it done. You guys supported me while I was out dealing with my stuff. Me and the team are here to support you. And I think, again, that lends to that brotherhood culture that we have and that taking care of each other and looking out for each other. And again, by contrast, the families as well and supporting them. So I think thank you for recognizing the families too, because you're right. They don't get the credit they deserve in putting up with us when this line of work that we deal with.
Yeah, they put up with our crap. And and for all our listeners out there, whether you're involved in law enforcement, military, or first responder, if you're in need, there is a national hotline. It's 988. It's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's a free call. All you have to do, you can text 988. You can dial 988. Don't think you have to go through whatever you think you're going through alone. Call these people. It's manned 24/7, 365. They will put you in touch with a professional. So get the help you need. Everybody needs a little help every once in a while. Don't think you have to do any of this alone. And certainly, if you're having any thoughts that might consider suicide, please call 988. Get the help. Okay. Earl, thank you so much for your transparency, for educating us, especially this old fart here, about tribal law enforcement and especially tribal lands and tribal communities. Thank you for bringing us up to Washington State and showing us a beautiful part of our country. You're a hero in our book. You'll never admit it because that's what heroes do. They never think they are. But when you're serving your fellow man, you're a public servant, and that's a badge to be worn with honor. So God bless you. God bless all the members of the, I almost said Swinomish. But now I can't even say it the right way. In your area of the world, thank you all for what you do, brother. If there's anything I can ever do for you, you know how to contact me.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you again. I'll look forward to catching up with you when I make it back down there.
Absolutely. So for our listeners, we're no longer doing the debrief on here, but thank you so much for joining us again this year. Wow. And we were only talking for 2 hours. It wasn't like it was a really long time, but thank you for coming back every week. I look forward to seeing you next week. God bless. Well, unfortunately, that's it for this week's episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. Thank you folks so much for taking the time to see and hear some of the best true crime content you can find anywhere. None of this would be possible without your support. If you didn't know this already, Game of Crimes is now on YouTube. Just type in Game of Crimes Podcast in the YouTube search bar. You can send me your comments on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or to our email address, which is gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com. Our website, it's gameofcrimespodcast.com. That's where you'll find all our episodes, books written by our guests, merchandise, and more. If you're looking for even more content, now go over to patreon.com/gameofcrimes and sign up. There you'll find several bonus episodes each month, ranging from serious and current topics to some silly and fun events. And you can even get early access to each week's interviews before they drop on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can even subscribe for free and hear the first 5 minutes of each episode, and that's to help you decide if you'd like to spend some of your hard-earned cash to hear more. That's patreon.com/gameofcrimes. To all our guests here on Game of Crimes, it's an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. I mean that sincerely. Thank you for your service to your communities, your countries, and for taking the time to tell us about your adventurous lives. May God bless and protect all the men and women in law enforcement, our military, and all of our first responders. And you know what? This goes for all of our listeners as well. Thank you for your continued support. And just one last thought here. It's okay for us to have different ideas and different opinions, but it doesn't mean we can't continue to be friends. All right. My final thank you. Thanks for joining me again to play the biggest, the baddest, the most dangerous game of all, the game of crimes. I'll see y'all next week.